From the Big Night Media Studios at the Boston TD Garden, this is the Word on the Street podcast, hosted by Mick Morrissey and Mark Goodale.
Mick, welcome. Great to have you again on this fine St. Patrick's Day. Golf season right around the corner. And I assume you have warned the grounds crew that you will be accosting your golf course soon?
Yes, that there will be a lot of timber felling by virtue of my balls going left and right. So it is golf season.
Yes.
It is St. Patrick's Day.
It is.
Great,
it is both.
which in the Boston area, Mark, is known as Evacuation Day.
Yes, it is. It is known as Evacuation Day. And I'm going to go out and get a boiled dinner, and you're not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that. Evacuation, to me, means moving my pickleball from the indoor courts to the outdoor courts.
Well, it's 40-something. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
It should be a great day for that. Now, Mick, as you know, we have a new voice with us on the street, Katharine Van Leer. Katharine, welcome. Katharine's a senior consultant here at Morrissey Goodale, and she works with AE firms across the country on growth and M&A. And you're out in the market every day talking to firm leaders and AE firms all over the country. It's really great to have you here, and welcome to the street, Katharine.
Thank you so much, Mark. Very excited to be here. I hail from a place that does not nearly have the same reverence for St. Patrick's Day. That is Durham, North Carolina.
Ah, I see.
So I'm going to debate that a little bit, as is my want. So I was in Savannah a number of years ago around St. Patrick's Day, one of the largest St. Patrick's Day parades outside of Ireland. It was one of the largest in the U.S. So, okay,
So
that killed the conversation right there.
Take that.
Killed it.
Well, Mick, let me tell you, the only thing that people care about where I come from is basketball right now.
Yeah.
They are flooding the streets when either Duke or UNC or NC State wins, but St. Patrick's Day, not nearly enough reverence. Although I will be having some boiled meats at my favorite pub, James Joyce, this evening.
James Joyce, very good. I went to the same high school as James Joyce went to.
Is that right?
Not at the same time, although some people think that I might have. So you're based in Raleigh, Durham. You head up our office there.
Yes, I do.
And just before we get into the industry stuff, tell us what's going on with the industry in Raleigh, Durham, maybe North Carolina.
You know, we're one of the life science hubs in the country, which actually is why there's a plentiful amount of flights between your lovely city of Boston and Raleigh, Durham.
We'll get to that in a moment.
So a lot of people moving to the area. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the country. And because of that, we're seeing a tremendous amount of consolidation. North Carolina was actually the fifth highest on our heat map, on the Morrissey Goodale heat map.
Yeah,
we had over 22 transactions last year.
So 22 mergers and acquisitions in the state.
In the
right?
state.
So you're really punching above your weight in terms of population, in terms of the GDP of the state. But if I'm an engineering or an architecture firm and I have a roads and rooftop strategy where I'm following population, and where population goes, infrastructure follows, North Carolina is a destination.
North Carolina is a destination. You know, when we talk to firms, a lot of where they want to start, if they're not in the Southeast already, is Florida and Texas. And then they're coming north slightly. You know, the Carolinas continue to be incredibly hot markets. Georgia, Tennessee, especially with healthcare. So there's a lot of interest in this area, and it's an exciting place to be.
You bring a great perspective to this conversation, Katharine.
Thank you, Matt.
And your flight was no problem getting in?
No, not at all, not at all.
Great.
I actually was coming from our Southeast M&A and Business Symposium.
Which we just wrapped up.
In Miami, and once my flight was about 3 hours late, I said, I need to be on the Word on the Street podcast tomorrow, so I need to make it to Boston. So I hopped on a flight to Atlanta. I cried a little. I, did a few 10-mile sprints.
Yeah.
And I was able to make it to Boston.
Well, it's a good thing that in Atlanta, all of the terminals are just so close together.
Yeah.
So close. I went from T to, I think it's E.
Oh,
a couple of times.
And I assume that was not all on foot. You must have taken trains.
Trains,
shuttles,
planes, automobiles.
the whole deal. So you mentioned we just wrapped up, and we did wrap up our Miami event just last week, and it was a really, really great event. And I'd be interested to know, Katharine, what felt different? You've been to all of our events and have presented at all of our events. Was there anything that felt different to you this time around in terms of tone or urgency or types of conversations you were hearing, not only during the panels and the presentations, but also between them?
I think first and foremost, being on South Beach, there were it was like watching bears emerge from hibernation.
Yeah.
People, it's been a long winter, it's been a cold winter, it's been a tough winter. I think people were very excited to be able to put feet in the sand. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of cautious optimism. Seeing the last year with a lot of volatility in the market, people are cautiously optimistic, but maybe a little bit more conservative in questioning how real are the backlogs, how long are these trends in infrastructure spending going to last, how am I going to transition my business either internally or externally, and just kind of excitement about the next year. And I felt like there were a lot of first-time attendees there as well who were interested in really getting to hear from their peers and sort of have those powwows and get to talk about what they were seeing in the market.
Yeah. And Mick, it's so it seems like at every one of our events we're talking about the uncertainty,
right?
As though it's going to get a little more certain down the road, and it just keeps getting more and more uncertain.
Yeah,
and that's got to play into the mindset. I got to think.
I think so. So Miami this year was our 12th annual event. We only took a break during the pandemic, right?
Kind of.
And when we look at the optimism of the attendees, and it's generally been pretty optimistic with some cautiousness. If we look back to 2025, when we did this last year, just given the change in the overall environment, in particularly from an administration's perspective and the whole discussion of tariffs, optimism actually reached its lowest level. And this year it came back, right? It came back to certainly years prior. So, but again, there's uncertainty.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty is always there. And I think the uncertainty now has to do a lot with just the speed of how things are changing.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of the marketplace, but also in terms of how we do business. And then everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about, disruption. What does it mean?
Yeah.
So there's that uncertainty as well.
Yeah, and AI clearly, we talk about how and there's some truth to it. This just seems a little different this time. We've got a situation where this technology is learning on its own. There are companies being sold with no people in them. It just seems different this time, and who knows where it's going to end up. But I just think there's going to be some major changes. I want to talk too a little bit about mergers and acquisitions, and Mick, I'll throw this at you for starters. Are you hearing anything different from buyers? Are you hearing anything different from sellers, or maybe just their sort of risk tolerance at this point? Are they getting more selective? Are sellers getting more desperate? Or is it just you're hearing all of it?
Yeah, I don't think desperate enters the conversation.
Yeah.
The drivers of consolidation consistently over the last decade are still in play, Mark. And Katharine sees this all the time in her work, I would believe. On the seller side, it's leadership and ownership transition and challenges with respect to the employee ownership model from a capitalization perspective. That'll probably be a contributing factor to more M&A this year and over the next 5 years, because we're going to see a record number of CEOs retiring this year and over the next 5 years. And not all of those transitions will work out, so there'll be more sellers coming to market. The buyers are still, while the Infrastructure and Jobs Act money has been, a lot of that has been spent, and there are questions about what's left in that. The demand for infrastructure rehab and new infrastructure is still there, and it's robust. And there's plenty of capital to fund it, public sector side and private sector side. So this industry is highly attractive to investors. Strategic acquirers in this industry, the largest firms, have not only a 48 contiguous state perspective, but a global view.
Right.
So acquisitions, the demand will be there going forward as well. So nothing really changed, although, again, we come back to AI, artificial intelligence. We see that discussion more and more in deal discussions, deal conversations, and in due diligence. But it's not a deal stopper. It's not a deal killer. It's a, what are you doing in your firm? Learning from that. Do you have a plan? How much are you spending? Because we're all figuring this out.
Yeah.
So if I acquire a firm that's got some good ideas, it's a net positive, right?
Yeah.
If I acquire a firm that really doesn't have an AI play, it's not a negative.
Right. So, Katharine, you spend a lot of time talking to firms before they even think about a transaction. What are you hearing from them right now?
I think it's a lot, building on a lot of what Mick said, you know, looking at the future, what do we need to contend with? What competition's coming into our markets and how we can continue to compete, whether that's through technology or through growing through mergers and acquisitions or a combination of both. It's one of the most interesting things, and this was a current that really played through Miami, is I think there's a lot more understanding of private equity entering the market and how that can be a tool for transition. Whereas many firms 5-6 years ago, oh, we're remaining independent, we don't want to do that. I think more people are seeing that as an opportunity to have the capital to achieve some of those growth goals, to diversify, whether it be services or technology, whether it be services that you're providing. And I think in Miami, that probably reached the highest level, is people talking to firms that had recently recapitalized and an interest in how could that be an option for me.
Right. And it's interesting because, as Mick said, we've been at this now for a dozen years or more, and the shift from the sort of operational mindset to the strategic mindset has been significant and really impressive. I mean, the leadership, you look at the leadership now of firms today, not that it wasn't good years ago, but it really has evolved. And you've got people who are really capable business people and thinking about creating competitive advantages where that wasn't really the main thrust. And so I'm very impressed with what I've seen evolve with the leadership of this industry that we serve. Mick, I want to go back to you for a second and talk about, you were talking about mergers and acquisitions, and I had asked about, are you seeing anything different in the conversations that buyers and sellers are having? Are you seeing anything different in the valuations, and do you see anything happening there? Are they going to continue to go up? Are they going to peter out? Or could they drop? There's a lot of volatility, as we talked about. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, so the valuations, what we've been doing internally at the company, as you know, really led by John Escobar, is to take a deep dive into valuations and multiples. Everybody talks about what are the multiples, right? But as John is uncovering through his and his team's research, there's really segmentation within the marketplace. There's not one set of multiples. Multiples vary depending on the type of firm and very much on the scale of the firm in terms of how large it is. So at the high end, if we just kind of cut to the chase that way, at the high end, the multiples are at record levels. And if we look at the next 12 to 18 months, there's everything would suggest that those multiples could go even higher. There's less of a risk that they will decline. Now, clearly there's more geopolitical risk. There's more risk that we haven't seen since 1970s with oil and other shocks to the external system. But by and large, here in the U.S., valuations would seem for the firms that are in really good markets, that have scaled, that have demonstrated they are investing in the future, those firms will continue to see robust multiples, close to record levels, if not higher.
So, Katharine, to add on that somewhat, we'll kind of wrap up our discussion about Miami here, and I wanted to ask you this: if folks out there watching and listening missed Miami, what's a takeaway that they should know?
You should have been there.
Well, that's the obvious.
That's the obvious. I think people think that these conferences are all for learning and seeing presentations and all of that. I think one of the greatest things that they bring, and what I hear from a lot of first-time attendees, is how much they got to spend time with their peers and meet new people. They got great information. They got kind of a great setting of the table of where the industry is, where deal activity is, but also the ability to kind of talk about that in real time with their peers.
Yeah, and that, in many ways, as you know, was that whole concept of making those connections was why we really embraced in our strategy work about a decade ago the open space meeting concept.
That's right.
Where if you get a large group of folks together, it's hard to make decisions, but you make so many connections, the potential is there. So our open space meeting concept is we get topics that everybody wants to talk about that are important. We put them up around the room, around the auditorium. We get 50, 100, 200 folks together. And the concept is you can move from conversation to conversation. You've got facilitators at each talking point. They take all the notes. But what you get is these live, it's like a Casbah of ideas.
Yeah.
And folks making connections with each other and saying, yeah, I get that, or no, I'm going to push back on that. And you got these great conversations going, which then feed into decision making.
That's right. And you get sort of this law of strange attractors happening where people who probably wouldn't talk very much see a topic that they can come together on and discuss. And it's just, we're very, as you know, Mick, we respect our clients, and we respect that they're, capable of figuring out where they want to go. And that's what makes it really so
Yeah, and to Katharine's point,
so productive.
Being there, you just get to make these connections. Yeah. And I know that we have our CEO dinners now, networking dinners, and connections have come out of those networking dinners where CEOs are building relationships with each other that are non-competitive, that are collaborative, folks going on different boards because of those. So the connections really are important, I think. I'm glad you said that, Katharine.
So I want to shift to the industry a little bit and what we're seeing there. And Mick, I'll go back to you on this. The M&A sort of follows the market, I guess, to some degree. How would you describe the industry right now in the markets that they serve? Are we in a good spot? Are we in a vulnerable spot? Is it too foggy to tell?
Since 2014, the industry has been on a ride, really. And we are now in the 13th year of really what I see as the golden age of the industry. Yeah. Every year, pretty much. Little blip during the pandemic, but it was only a blip. The industry has expanded. Top line has grown. Profits have grown. Wealth has been created for owners. Value has been created for clients. Over that 13 years, the industry has innovated. We've experimented with digital. We've incorporated digital into our business models. We're experimenting with AI. You and I remember prior to the Great Recession how the big fear was commoditization in this industry. You don't hear the phrase commoditization anymore. Yeah. So the industry right now is as strong as it's ever been. We are migrating to a new cohort of younger CEOs, more diverse CEOs that are more open to investing in technologies and are more plugged in to new technologies. So I see the industry in as strong as a position as it has ever been, and it needs to be, because we have competition from other industries. We have disruptors that either externally or internally are going to fundamentally change how we do business. And we need to be strong as an industry to take advantage of those disruptors.
And it doesn't mean that it's not without its challenges, this industry. We still have, regardless about what we talk about, AI and technology, and we still have a people issue.
Right.
Just finding the people, finding the folks, the expertise to be able to do this very important stuff that our clients do. And also, I think in terms of ownership and leadership transition, are you seeing any change in that, or is it the same old story? It's the same old challenge. Okay, golden age for the industry, great points, but it's still not without its challenges, right? I mean, so we've got people have been historically a fundamental constraint finding that expertise. You got ownership and leadership transition challenges. So there are still undercurrents there. There are still challenges there. To what degree have those evolved, if any?
So I think the evolution in both of those areas, Mark, we are seeing startup firms that are saying, we're AI first, we're architect second. We're AI first, we're engineering firm second. We're AI first, we're environmental consulting second. So they're leading with technology around the space or in the space where traditional firms play right now, and they're competing in that regard. It's not a new business model, right? So Tesla talked about themselves as being, we're a technology company that happened to be a car company. So by using a technology-first approach, they are seeking to decouple themselves from the constraint of trying to recruit people. Right. Which is what everybody's trying to do, and everybody knows it's a constraint. So instead of having the same worn-out discussion about recruiting and retention being constraints, they have a radically different approach. Now, those models still have to be ground-truthed and tested, but that's certainly, I think, a departure. Secondly, with respect to ownership transition, an emergence over the last 5 years, let's say, where private equity is available to leadership teams to step into their firms as a minority investor. So they take the private equity group takes a minority investment in the firm, allowing the existing leadership team to effect an ownership transition, but continue with their brand name and their business model and the leadership team and management team in place. Now, what that does is it's another tool that's available at this time of some real challenges with ownership and leadership transition, and it augments the ESOP tool.
AI is able to really come in and take a lot of the roles or the job and the work that, the 1 through 3 year engineers are doing. What is that going to mean for the value that they are adding to clients? How are they going to have a more meaningful role in the client work that they're doing and avoid fee compression and kind of a race to the bottom?
Well, and it is, there seems to be a moral dilemma among some, at least, about how can we charge our clients this when they know it's just the press of a button and et cetera, et cetera.
I think the honest answer that we're getting from most CEOs is that they know that they need to change how they're doing the work and presenting it to the clients, but not quite sure what that looks like. They're asking kind of the second harder question. If AI compresses technical labor, what value are we actually offering?
Right, yeah.
And I think that's what they're wrestling in, how do we get more grants for clients? How do we, provide additional services around each project? And that's where I think we're going to see CEOs and leaders in this industry get really innovative over the next couple of years and set the bar for that.
Almost redefining, the purpose and the value that these firms are bringing. It's going to be a big deal, because there is that sort of, hey, we used to spend 20, 40 hours doing this, and now it's 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and so how do we still charge them? Well, there's still value there, but it's in the definition and the roles that we play in terms of being helping them figure out how to make grounded assessments and sound decisions, helping their clients do that, I would think.
But I think as well, there are a lot more restraints and fees that are put on the engineers and the architects in doing project work.
Right.
The threats of cybersecurity, the costs of subscriptions, and the tools that they need to use for that. And I think it's their job to educate the clients on all of the costs that go into
Right,
that are associated
it's just the
with
cost of doing
the work.
business is different, and it's more.
Yes.
So I want to shift to Dallas, and Mick, we've got this brand new event coming up, the CEO Symposium in May. What's the idea behind it?
So we spent about 2 years talking with CEOs about what they would want in a new event, what they felt could be valuable to them and to their peers. And what we heard was, number one, they want to what Katharine said earlier on, they want to connect with other CEOs who want to build new relationships, and they want to reinforce existing relationships. Number two, they wanted to do it in a way where they could share ideas, learn from each other, have their ideas tested, hear from others who have experimented with either operations or new initiatives in their businesses and what they've learned through those experimentations, have an open discussion about what has failed and what lessons have been learned. And again, doing this in an environment where they're with other CEOs. And then the third item, or the third thing we got back was, these folks are really busy. I mean, we wrote about this in Word on the Street earlier this year, right? You look at the CEO's calendar, and it's boom, 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 every day. Now, being busy isn't necessarily smart, but there are all of these demands on their time. So instead of having an event, in some far-flung mountain or some really nice location where they could play golf or swim or fish or do whatever you might do beside the ocean, they wanted something that they could fly into, get a lot of interaction and learning, and then get back home within 24 hours. So we've created this, the CEO Symposium, which from our perspective is going to be the most valuable 24 hours of networking and learning that any industry CEO will have in 2026. We're going to gather no more than 100 industry CEOs, and it's just industry CEOs. So unfortunately, investors, you're not invited to this event. It's purely industry CEOs, largely from E&R top 500 firms or from E&R top 200 environmental consulting firms, series of roundtables on topics that will be chosen by the CEOs, networking dinners that Katharine talked about earlier, which CEOs seem to love, receptions, lunches, guest panels and speakers. The guest panels are with some of the largest firms in the industry, VHB, Terracon, Trillon Group. These are firms that are leading the industry forward, so we can learn from them. And then we have this great panel with two firms that are the leading architectural and structural designers of data centers, the hottest and in many ways the most controversial market in the U.S. right now. And they're going to be talking about that market. So that's what the event is.
So it seems to be that, it sounds kind of corny, but we do care a lot about our clients, our CEO clients as well. And, it can be lonely at the top, as the old saying goes, but to be able to share, in this event with other CEOs, Mick, what in your mind would make this a win for those who attend?
After 24 hours, as a CEO, if I come out of this event having made connections that are valuable to me in terms of my effectiveness as a CEO, to my firm in terms of opportunities created for my firm, either market opportunities or opportunities to improve my performance. And if I come out of there as a CEO, having learned more about where the industry is headed, which indirectly then translates into me being more effective as a CEO, those are big wins right there.
So, Katharine, from your perspective, you talk to, again, you're really focused on interacting with leadership around the industry. Why does this kind of event matter to a CEO?
Well, I think I'll start with a Hamilton reference. It's an opportunity to get into the room where it happens. You know, really, being a CEO is incredibly lonely in a lot of ways because there aren't many people in their firm that they can talk to. And when a decision gets to their desk, it's usually the hardest decision. And sitting in some of those dinners and working on the CEO panel, there was kind of this relaxation and this, I can talk candidly and I can be really honest and vulnerable and share the things that I'm not able to share with the leadership team around me, or ask the questions that I can't ask my peers. And I think as much of, yes, it's great to get together and, be on panels and all of that, it really is that connection and that shared responsibility. These are incredibly high-performing, disciplined people who I don't feel like they can get comfortable in a lot of rooms because there's always a lot of eyes on them. And this allows them to be with their peers.
And Katharine, it's interesting, as you were speaking about this, I'm thinking about CEOs in their firms, and many of them that we've worked with, that I've worked with, I've witnessed their leadership team. Lots of great people on those leadership teams. The people on those leadership teams have peers inside their own firm. The CEO doesn't. And so when you come to an event like this, you've got the rare situation where you're surrounded by dozens and dozens of folks who are sitting in your seat somewhere else. And I think that alone, to me, is really powerful. So we're looking forward to this event now. And we're also looking forward, Mick and I are also looking forward very much, Katharine, for you to be joining us on these podcasts going forward. What are you hoping to bring to these conversations?
I think a perspective of, I spend most of my days on the phone with CEOs, whereas the types of markets they serve or their geography may be different or their tenure in the leadership. I feel like it comes down to three things that they all care about: their clients, their employees, and the firm as a whole. And I think I can bring an interesting perspective of different challenges that that CEOs are facing today. What are the things that are keeping them up at night? What are the questions that they feel like they can't ask anyone? And it's really interesting getting on these calls. You start talking to a CEO and get them to open up, and they are incredibly vulnerable and honest about what challenges they're facing and where they need support.
Well, again, we're looking forward to having you on board on our podcasts. And thanks to our viewers. As always, please like and subscribe. And we hope to see you next time on the street.